Your flashlight's on.
Just because I'm bright.
That's
That's why my dad always calls me son.
Yeah. Which son?
Go fuck yourself.
Are we going to go there with this? Are we seriously going to go there with this? So we're here to talk today about your insecurities and your older brother.
Therapy sessions with Lucas.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, that's what this is.
No, I gotta start by thanking you for helping me out today.
You're welcome.
I have driven up the mountain to the frozen tundra of Blowing Rock, North Carolina.
It's pretty cold.
Yeah, it's miserable.
Yeah, I was invited by Velo to go to Oklahoma City or Tulsa, and
in the summer, right?
No, this weekend. And Tony Mercury calls me. He's like, "Hey, I just want you to know that it could either be really hot or it could be really cold, and it's going to be really cold." Sorry, I get that's where they're headquartered, but I've made a new rule that if you want me to go somewhere and it's cold outside, I need to go somewhere where it's warm.
Offsetting.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is miserable. I was in San Diego a week ago. It was 70 degrees. It's now 8.
That's how you have a training event.
Yes.
That's one of the contributing factors to why I've never been to Vision.
Really?
Is why the fuck would you want to go there at that time of year?
Dude, sometimes it's 80 degrees and nice, and the very next day you wake up and there's snow on the ground, and you're like, what happened? How did this even happen? So I went to San Diego for this leadership class, right? Mm-hmm. Holy cow. This leadership class was based on the psychology. It wasn't based around like the automotive business. It was based purely in psychology. It was based purely in the concept of why human beings do what they do, right? And man, I've got a manager that went with me, and watching him have breakthroughs as a human being sitting through this class and watching him say, holy cow, I've missed it as a dad. I've missed it as a husband. And I see where I missed it. And it's things that, those little isms that your parents always share, like treat people the way you want to be treated, little just comments they've made throughout your life that you didn't understand the science behind it. This class puts all the science behind it.
So this class is Hertzberg?
Mm-hmm. Michael Smith. Michael Smith is his name, but he works for Hertzberg and Smith.
Okay.
Well, I guess he works with the Institute now, but his company was Hertzberg and Smith.
Okay.
And so what they did was they focused on the psychology of leadership, and they focused on the psychology of deals, right? Because they typically do mergers and acquisitions. Mm-hmm. And he set out to understand why did private equity, why did venture capital spend more money on this business versus this business? What was the difference? Okay. It's really cool to get to hear his perspective on it, because he said the difference is that if a business had a good culture and its destination and its vision was laid out for its staff, that if the owner sells, the staff continues in that direction. But if it's just a job, if it's just a place to show up and get a paycheck, the minute the owner sells, there is no business, right? Because the staff moves away.
So how do you set a vision, destination, whatever catchphrase, hot term you want to use for auto repair?
He dug into that, right? And he really talked about, as human beings, what is it that we're hoping to accomplish with our lives, right? And so now it's not necessarily about where an auto repair shop can go. It's how does an auto repair shop help its people achieve what they want to achieve, right? And develop that culture into serving them, so therefore they serve the clients. This is a tool. This is a resource. This business is what helps me get my home. This business is what helps me go to the next step in my career. And it's about, he has this phrase he keeps using, truth tapes. He's like, what's on your truth tape? What's on your truth tape? What are you telling yourself? What are you saying to yourself? And in auto repair, we often say, this is a dead-end career. I'm not going to get anywhere with this. I'm going to age out as a technician. I'm not going to be able to do A, B, C, or D. And that's just not true. And so he's talking about, hey, let's change what we're telling ourselves, and let's talk about where we can go as opposed to where we're not going to go. Because there is a lot of negative, not just self-talk, but there's a lot of negative industry talk.
Oh, yeah.
And we are setting course based on the industry self-talk. And I think it's headed in a negative direction in some aspects.
Well, so a lot of the echo chambers that are the groups that we are part of, the old heads are bitter and kind of ground down to a nub and telling all the young ones that either they're stupid or they should not get in this industry or they should get out. One part of David's shtick is to always say you should never want to own an auto repair shop.
Never want to start a shop. Never want to. And I think there's experiences, because that's one of the things that they talked about in this class, is that your life is made up by these like sub memories, right? And so you have these little memories and these experiences throughout life of these things that have happened to you, like your brother beating the crap out of you and like being far superior. And
he never won a fight with me, not once.
Okay, I'll remember that. Next time I see him, I'm going to ask. But so we have these sub experiences, and we learn from those experiences, and they set our path. They set the direction that we're going in. And I think that a lot of that comes from bad experiences they've had, right?
And negative experiences leave a more permanent, more lasting mark on people's. Yeah. I think. Yeah. I mean, how many people in our trade and in any trade set their policies and procedures of their business based on the bad customer interactions versus the 95% of good customer interactions.
The exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
Well, and so we did talk about a lot of that, especially on the way back. We're talking about some of the things we've done in my business and some of the thought processes that we've had and how we've done things. And I think back about these folks that have made decisions based on these negative past experiences. In a lot of ways, they block the door. They barricade the door to better experiences because of what they're already saying, what they're already telling themselves. Jeff's a really good example of that. Right? Jeff was really frustrated before he came to ASTA the first time. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I'm done. I'm out. And then he came to ASTA and he saw a different perspective. And I think of all the things that I took from that class, and it's something that I tell myself frequently, that other people don't have the perspective that you have, but it was a reminder that they don't. I'm really bad not to catch that. I'm really bad. People say I paint with a really broad brush. It's because I see things through my lens and I express myself with my lens. Other people don't have that same experience. So us old owners that have been doing this for a while, we're like, it's not that bad. You don't know what you're talking about. And so we shut the door. Those old techs are like, oh, I've had this terrible experience. I'm not, you're not going to convince me of anything other. So what do? They shut the door. They don't leave the door open to be able to have a discussion or understand how somebody else sees things.
That's absolutely been my experience as I've been going to more and more training events over the years.
Yeah.
Is I had a very narrow scope of view of our trade.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in my father's shop, and then I bought my father's shop.
Yeah.
I never worked at another shop.
Right.
And so I grew up going to his 20 group meetings and being exposed to other shops that operated in the same fashion.
Yeah.
And so I was very fortunate. He was already kind of a forward-thinking, forward-operating shop. He treated his people really well. He gave competitive compensation and benefits packages. He never, did the "I'll get you back next time" thing, and he never took hours away from guys.
Right.
And so I'd hear all of these complaints,
but it didn't seem to line up.
Well, just fucking quit. Go somewhere else. But that wasn't the nature of the marketplace until the last 3 or 4 years.
And even now, it's the minority.
Yeah.
Right?
And Jeff actually kind of beat that into me in conversation after conversation with him. He was like, you don't understand.
Yeah.
Most shops are like this. And my whole experience had been the 5% of shops that weren't like that.
Yeah.
Right? The other thing is, if you see it, all the coaches say that everywhere they go, they talk about the methodologies that they espouse, and they're told that won't work in my market. That won't work in my market.
Yep.
And they are, because I've heard it now going to classes all
over and over.
And I bought into that because I grew up in a really good market, and I still operate in a really good market. So compared to a lot of these guys that we know in the industry and a lot of these shops around the country, it is really easy to do what we do compared to if we tried to do it in a town with a median income of $30,000.
Yeah, for sure.
that's not to say that won't work in my market, because there are still world-class operators in very depressed areas who can make it work. It's just easier where I am.
Well, and it's relative, right? So like if you're in a depressed market, that means that rent's depressed. That means wages are depressed. It means across the board, typically you see lower numbers. Not everything.
Well, I mean, a gallon of milk is the same pretty much anywhere, right? Unless you're in Hawaii or something. A new Silverado is the same pretty much everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So, yes, there are things that rent being a primary one, but
I mean, that's one of your largest expenses, though.
Yeah.
Proportionally.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, so you have to take that into account. And, you know, I don't know. It comes back to this victim mentality for me. And right before you walked in, Chris and I were sitting downstairs, and there's this Jordan Peterson video that made him go like uber famous. And it was him talking about all of these different people who claim to be oppressed. And he's like, of course you are. And you're oppressed, and you're oppressed, and you're oppressed, and you're oppressed. He's like, we're all oppressed because life is struggle. Like that to a degree is the meaning of life. Life is struggle. The difference is are you going to get up off your ass and do something to make it better? Right? Because like there's nobody on this planet that you could imagine that doesn't have struggle. Even the people who have it made and things are going well, right? Like I think about you often when I struggle in the shop, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. But no, I'm serious. And I've talked about this on the show before, because I always aspired to like reach your level. And I always said, when I reach Mike's level, when I get to that point, things will be better. And then eventually I saw people doing that to me. And I'm like,
oh, shit.
You people have lost it. Like, this is rough, right?
Well, I think the reality is, I mean, we all know this. The reality is very different than the image that is portrayed.
Yeah, on the whether internet. You mean to or not.
Yeah, and I don't want to complain and whine on the internet. And I don't want to talk about all the times that I slam my dick in the door due to stupidity.
Well, I mean, like the thing that I thought about was when you had to step back onto the counter, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting here thinking, how do I get off the counter? I never want to be back on the counter. I hate being on the counter. I mess the business up when I'm on the counter. I make it tough for the technicians when I'm on the counter. I'm good at being on the counter, but I'm ruthless. Right. When it comes to that, I want a very set of standards for my clients, and I want this, that, and the other. And it's really hard to be able to duplicate that.
I think it's really hard. I bet it's really hard to work for you as a service advisor.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They don't like that at all.
I mean, you just have a very exacting set of standards that you expect.
I do. And I sell a lot of service, and it's really hard to keep up with it because like I'm pushing them. Right. And we're driving, and then one day you pop up and you're like, man, I'm back on the counter. I'm like, what? Hang on now. Like, maybe at this point I'm thinking that I just want to quit.
It wasn't long.
Because I don't want to do this, right? But that's just it, is like you walked away from the business and you thought that you had set like this standard. And this is what's going to be, how it's going to be ran, and this is what it's going to do. And then one day you look back and you're like,
well, it didn't run off the rails all at once, right? It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. It was incremental distraction from the mean. And, you know.
Oh, dude, I am so going through that right now. Not with the shop.
You've got some. Hey, back up. I want to have that conversation if you're willing to have it. Yeah. But I also want to talk about, if you're willing, your latest eviction.
Yeah. That was a crazy situation.
Tell me about it.
We have had a gentleman who came into the shop and has been coming here for a few years, and every time he comes here, it's a problem, right? I'm not going to judge anybody, but I'm going to tell you, I think there's some addiction problems in this person's life, and for those that have seen the video, you can see his face, and I think it's obvious what kind of addiction we're dealing with here. And this person has money. It's not a money problem. A while back, he had come in and he brought in a car. We worked on that car. He wanted to buy a car that had been abandoned here. We'd gotten the title. We were going to scrap it. And I went to him and I said, hey, he was asking about it. And I said, look, dude, I don't know anything about it. And I said, if you go look on Kelley Blue Book, this is a $15,000 car. I've got it running, but that's really the extent of it. This is sold as is.
What kind of hoopty was it?
I think it was a TIG one. And I was like, $1,000, man. It's yours. And I mean, it's torn all to pieces. The interior's trashed. It's obvious. He's like, I just need it to run for a little bit.
Hey there. I'm going to tell you about something that has completely transformed how I run my shop, Tekmetric. As a 20-year shop owner, outdated systems used to slow us down. Everything was clunky. From check-in to estimate building to customer updates, it all felt just super inefficient. Switching to Tekmetric has changed everything. With Tekmetric, you get a powerful shop management system that includes DVI, quick and easy estimate building, inventory management, real-time reporting, amazing customer communication, and it's really easy for your employees to learn how to use the software. I'm talking like a one-day learning curve. On top of that, Tekmetric has tons of other tools to make you an even better operator. Stuff like integrated payments with buy now, pay later options is a huge asset. Ask me how I know. And recently, they've added a CRM component with their partnership with Shop Genie, which I'm a happy Shop Genie customer already, so I'm super excited about that. Now, obviously, there are a lot of factors at play here, but I want to give you some facts about my business since I made the change to Tekmetric. In September of 2020, when I switched to Tekmetric, my ARO was $293. In September of 2024, we were $916. That's over 300% growth. Now, I'm not saying that Tekmetric created all of that change, but I'm 100% saying that I couldn't have come this far without Tekmetric. It's a key factor in our growth and success. If you're ready to level up your shop, Tekmetric has everything you need: productivity, revenue, customer experience. Measure up by every measure with Tekmetric. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more.
Okay. A couple weeks later, comes back and it needs a wheel bearing. And it was a wheel bearing and something else. I dropped like $1,600. Just paid for it. Didn't charge him.
Why did you not charge him?
Well, I had said it was as is, but I felt bad about it, so I fixed it. And no issues. Didn't have any problems. Was happy when he left. Everything's great. Free. And he leaves, and then he brings his other car back. And it was things like he took forever to approve a repair. Subframe had rotted out on the car. We fixed the car. He took forever to come get the car. And then he gets the car, and every time he comes in, it's like, I want an oil change. We make wrecks, and then he brings the car back 2 days later saying, you broke my car. Look what the F you did. Blah, 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 blah. And so when he does this, he starts mentioning the things that we wrecked. And he's like, you did this. Bro, I told you about it. We asked you if you wanted to deal with this. But he has amnesia all of a sudden, right? Comes back once it's fixed. So a couple of months back, car comes in. Car's in terrible shape. Wants an oil change.
This is the Tigga one or a different one?
Different car.
Okay.
It's a Mercedes. Once the car fixed, we do the oil service. We give him estimates for everything it needs. Put a belt on it. Ship the car out. Now, it goes through QC. Technician drives it 10 miles. QC drives it 10 miles. Checks all fluids, checks for leaks, sees nothing.
Well, pause. A car that comes in for an oil service and gets a fan belt gets 20 miles of test driving with you?
Yeah. If it's just an oil service, it'd be 6. So it'd be 3 and 3. Mm-hmm. If it is anything more than oil service, tires, things like that, very basic stuff, it's 20 miles.
Dude,
and
that's so much more than we do.
Well,
so much.
But now take this into account. You're in a very different market. Mm-hmm. To drive 10 miles in your market is going to take 2 hours, right? To drive 10 miles here takes us 12 minutes, right? Go up. Our route is we go up here and we go up to Apski, turn left, go up the hill, turn left, go down to the parkway, turn right onto the parkway, up to Thunder Hill, turn around, come back, and turn back in the parking lot. That's 10 miles, right? 15 minutes max. And the reason it's that number is because I found that every one of my genuine comebacks where there was a problem happened between 15 and 18 miles if I did not drive the vehicle. And so 90% of all of the things that we have happen, we catch with a 20-mile drive, right? And because the tech only drives at 10 miles, it's not that much time out of his day. He comes back, he rechecks his work, makes sure it's good.
Who does QC? Is that
George.
Oh, okay. And is that all George does is QC?
That's all George does is QC. And so he does the quick clean on it, rechecks all the fluids, retorques the wheels. And so it's just that second layer of protection. Now, we serve a very particular client, if you will, right? Like the client that we serve here wants that. They expect their cookies in their car when they pick their car up. We were talking to one of our fleets the other day, and they said, we have this problem. Can you like print little cards out to put in the cars for us so they know who to call? You bring your cars here all the time. They're like, yeah, but everybody only knows you as the cookie shop. And so they can't remember the name of the shop. They're just like, the place with cookies, you know. And so that's why we, you know, our clientele wants that. That's the type of experience they want. We're not looking for the turn and burn consumer.
So with that really thorough QC process and having a full-time dedicated QC person, because you haven't had that you didn't have that before you moved into this building, right?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
yeah.
I did? Okay. Mm-hmm. What's your comeback rate like?
It holds at 3% for the most part, unless I have like a big failure transmission or something like that. Right now it's at 5.37%, but it is because we did like 3 transmissions for one vehicle to get a good one back in it, right?
So how do you measure that percentage?
So it's billed at full price,
okay,
right? Because when Rick taught me that, it was, hey, I want to know what your opportunity loss is. I don't care what the warranty number is. I don't care about any of that. I want to know what the opportunity loss was. Now, that saved my butt. I don't know if you've ever ran into this. That saved my butt. Sales tax. If they do an audit on your sales tax in North Carolina and they see that you have a ticket that had X dollars on it, and then you have the same ticket that had the same service on it that was done and it has $0 on it, they will make you pay the tax off the other one. And they'll say you can't have a $0 ticket for the same service. That's tax evasion. That, swear to God.
Even if it was covered by your defect warranty?
Mm-hmm. Because that's use tax. We have sales and use tax in North Carolina. You can't $0 a ticket.
So you got audited and you got busted for that?
Almost. Well, and they looked at it and they said, oh, that was paid. So
then you bill it at full retail, and then you just have like a payment type that is warranty.
It's a payment
expense.
type, warranty for each individual technician, warranty for each individual vendor. You can either do it manually in QuickBooks, or you can have it set up to where it does it, and I don't have to categorize it.
What's the payment type in Shopware reporting?
What do you mean?
Like when you go to, I don't use Shopware, so I don't know, but like in Tekmetric,
mm-hmm.
when I'm closing a ticket, it's cash, check, or your
credit so it's other.
Okay.
It's other, and then it's other credit card, and then it reports as whatever I name it. So I can name it whatever I want.
QuickBooks where you want it.
And then I map it in back office directly to the expense account I want to go in. And then I can go look at my expense account, and if I see a trend or see something, ETE reman's way up there at the very top of that list this year. You're right.
Not far into the year yet.
Yeah, I know. But so, we take this dude's car, we drive it, we go through the motions, coolant's checked, everything's good. He comes back and he says that it's leaking. Now, I will not deny that I was quick to act. A couple things. There's a lot going on in life right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been a little stressful. I had started new medications for the back and everything else going on. And I'm really bad for, if I take medication, it makes me kind of irritable. It makes me grouchy the next day. And I've stopped taking the medicine. I'll just deal with the pain. But so he comes in, and I hear him saying to the advisor did not explain it correctly. Typically, our process is if we have a comeback, we say, now, we're going to take a look at this. If it is something to do with the work we did, there's no charge whatsoever, right? And he handled it the wrong way. Did not deal with it properly. But I walk out because I hear him ramping up.
Yeah, the escalation of tone.
Yeah, and so I instantly made a decision. As I was sitting in my chair, I was grouchy. I'm really grouchy in the mornings in the first place. And then on top of that, I'd been taking the medication. And when I walked out of that door, I said to myself, are you going to deal with this now? Or are you going to deal with this later? Because you know what's going to happen if you deal with it later. And so I walked out and I said, let me explain to you how we do this. And I did like that. And he goes like this. Now, my worst trigger, the one thing that I have to be very careful that I don't knock somebody's teeth out for, is don't mock me, right? Like you can say whatever you want to me, mock me, and I have a visceral reaction for some reason. I cannot help myself. And I have gotten in trouble
from being a little brother.
Right? Well, I'm going to tell you, I have had my fair share of almost oopsies over this, right? Like that would have been a felony. And when he did that to me, he goes like, yeah, like that. And dude, I just walked up and I pushed his keys back across the counter. So I'm done. Get out. And he just like, you saw the video, 15 minutes of him just standing there, badgering, pushing other clients out of the way, being a disrespectful jackass, right? I've only kicked 4 people out ever. I've only told 4 people I won't work for them. Even the girl that I evicted, we went on and fixed that car for her. She's in prison. All right. She got 8 years in prison.
Holy cow.
Mm-hmm. Almost killed her grandmother. And, you know, I think that that is a clear sign that the mental health system in this country is broken. Right. And when I talked to them, when the thing happened with the girl and mm-hmm. the whole evicted thing came up, I stood there and talked with the sheriff's officers about it. We had a nice long chat and he said, I know. And he said, the problem is he said, this is not a situation where this is a human being that is thinking clearly. And this is not a situation where like, I think that prison's the answer for her. It's only going to make this worse. But our hands are tied.
That's how the system's built.
Yeah. Right. And did you see the other video that I posted? The dude trying to steal my wife's car in front of the shop?
I didn't watch it closely. I read your description.
So
it was the guy who had the traumatized child with him.
Yeah. And it like freaked me out because I saw the fear in this kid's eyes. Right. And they came out here and they asked me questions about what happened and they did stop him. Right. They pulled him over. And she said, I can't tell you like the whole story, but I can tell you that he has a verified diagnosis and that this is a mental health thing and that the child is safe and the child is with somebody who can care for the child. And this is a case of the system dropping the ball. He shouldn't have been in a situation. And that, to me, that was a real wake up call because I saw in this dude's face, right? Like when he apologized for trying to take my wife's car, he was genuine, but dude, they're like whatever was talking.
Was he confused or? Because it was the same type of vehicle, right? That he had.
No, he was not confused. He was hearing voices that were telling him to do things, and he was saying things like, "Are you familiar with Hamzad? Are you familiar with Hamzad? Do you know Hamzad? Do you know Hamzad? Sandy sent me. And like all these other like weird things." And so I think he was schizophrenic. I think that he had gone and gotten his child and he was okay. And he stopped taking his medication and had an episode and things went downhill. And she literally said he could not figure out how to get back to where he was supposed to. He doesn't even know where he's at. He's just driving around. And I think most likely what it was is the other car was almost out of gas. Right. And so it was just some sort of a logical response to try and solve that. And so if you want to know what I think the real root of the problem is, I think that there's a mental health crisis in this country. And I don't think that we're doing a good job of handling it. And for a long time, we've just labeled them as criminals. And so instead of dealing with what caused it, dealing with work through it, the girl that got evicted, very, very wealthy family, mogul family. Right? I mean, so much money you could not spend it in interest alone. Wealthy. Mom's dead. Dad's dead. Siblings are dead. Right? Grandmother's alive. Addiction has consumed the entire family. Right? And so you can't look at that human being and say, yeah, like you were crazy and you were acting nuts in my facility. But you're still a human being, and I hate that what's happened to you has happened to you, right? This other guy, it's an addiction problem. And like, if you listen to what he said, he's friends with me on Facebook. So he's like watching me. I was in Vegas, and he keeps saying like, how was Vegas, Lucas? What does that have to do with anything, right? Like, what does that, he could have de-escalated that situation at any point in time. And so what made him leave is I turned around and walked away. all the other clients came in, they apologized. They're like, hey, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. And I felt like a moron because he's in there screaming about how we broke his car. I explained over and over again, we didn't break a car, and I'm happy to look at it, but you're not going to disrespect me or my team.
So in retrospect, would you have done anything differently?
I probably would have slowed down a little bit. I think that the stress of everything in life happening, I think the pressure of that situation with other things, I hired this manager, we're trying to fix things in the shop. He came in, he made a lot of like really big changes without seeing, like I should have slowed him down, but I didn't want to like bridle him. I didn't want to like restrict him. And he started making changes and I was thinking to myself, oh man, he's not been here long enough to see like this is a season and then there's another season. And like he's going to make a choice in this season that affects the next season, and then it's going to backfire on him, and then he's going to try and make a choice in that other season, and it's going to be a vicious cycle, right? And so I had to step in and kind of bring it back, but all of that was happening at about that time. Do I regret handling it the way I did? I've talked to my wife about that, and she said, I know you well enough to know that if you hadn't done what you did then, you'd be questioning yourself if you handled it the wrong way if you didn't do it, right? And so I think that I think I did the right thing. And if I've learned anything, it's that when somebody acts like that, it's only a matter of time before it comes out, right? It's only a matter of time before they act like that with you. They're going to do it.
Well, so I think that in watching the video,
and
after watching the video, I think I advise you not to release it, not to put it out online, right? Because the girl that's in prison now put that online and everybody had a good laugh about it and everything.
Yeah.
But you were in pain in that video. Like you could hardly walk and you have a woman trying to tackle you, right?
Right.
There's a lot going on in that one. But in this one, I think there was a couple of teachable moments
for sure.
from my perspective. And one is talking to your staff about not just the process on how you handle a customer perceived comeback.
Yeah.
We can all that's easily teachable, right? You just need to remind them, but that we are all human and that we are all creatures dealing with multifactorial things that are playing into our interactions.
Right.
And if you weren't in pain and on new pain management medication, and if you weren't exhausted and you didn't have all these other stresses going on in your life, maybe you would have handled that differently.
Yeah, for sure.
And if it can happen to us, it certainly happens to our customers. And how often have you had a customer just act a fool and then come back later that day or the next day or the next week and say, I'm so sorry, my wife just left me, or I'm so sorry, my dog just died. Or,
absolutely.
So,
and I've always told, so when I became really close friends with Jeff and Brian, they both took a very hardline stance to a lot of things. And I've always said to them, you have to seek first to understand. You need to slow down and understand what's going on. The trigger for me in this case was when he threw his hands up like that. Like, to me, it was just disrespect, and it was the wrong day to disrespect me, right? He can find somebody else to fix his car. So you're right. You're right. And do I wish I had handled it differently? I wish I had slowed down, right? I also had a history with this person to the point that this had happened so many times.
Probably needed to fire him anyway.
Yeah.
Regardless of that situation.
It's not a profitable client, and not, I'm learning that we don't just look at profitable clients as numbers, right? Profitable client can be a number. Profitable client can be loyalty. Profitable client can be kind and sharing about your business with other people, right? Like, there's a lot of different ways you can look at something profitably. And this person had been a net loss.
Well, the 80-20 rule goes both ways, right?
Yeah.
80% of your profit comes from 20% of your customers. 80% of your problems come from 20% of your customers.
That's it.
So you've got to minimize and mitigate the 20% of problems and focus on the 20% of goods, right?
For sure. For sure. And I would much rather work for good clients.
So we talked about that. I want to go back to the leadership training that you just got back from San Diego for. Are you or Chris doing anything differently today than what you would have done 2 weeks ago?
Man, Chris has been through the ringer, right? Because things have happened in his life. He came from a dealership. He saw a lot of things. and he's pretty open and has shared a lot of this. I'm not going to share his personal stuff, but that training was, for lack of a better term, a God wink for him. It was like the right thing at the right place at the right time. And I look over at one point and he's got like tears streaming down his face. And he's like, I have not been the person that I want to be. I've not been the husband I want to be. I've not been the father that I want to be. I've not been the manager I want to be. I've not been the human being that I want to be. And I'm realizing now that so many things that happened in the past have set the tone for where I was going. And I have continued to march through life saying, I'm going to bull my way through it. I'm not going to deal with that. Let me put that back here. I'm going to march through life. I'm going to put that back here. Right. And so every time it came up, instead of dealing with the elephant in the room, it got put on the back burner and the elephant got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I think right now Chris is really trying to deal with a lot of this and trying to bite off what he can chew. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think that going to that class one time is enough for me to be able to retain enough of it to fully implement, because there's so much information. And we're going to have a class here, but I'll get the book and I'll take some pictures of some of what's in it and send it to you so you can see what I'm talking about.
When are you having the class here?
February 24th through 28th, I think.
Damn, 4 days.
Yeah, somewhere in there. But
I'm just trying to figure out if I can come, right?
Oh, I wasn't going to give you an option.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. So, but the things that it woke me up to is we have some people in our organization who are telling themselves things from past experiences, and it's going to take time for them to learn to trust this is not that. But we also have got to get them to start telling themselves a different narrative, right? Because the narrative they're telling themselves, like, there's a lot of ways to look at that. But when you look at another human being and you know for sure they're telling themselves a narrative that's not true.
I've had, I've gone through a lot of employees over 20 years.
Yeah.
And with some of the systems that I've been implementing in the last 12 months, even more, right?
Yeah.
I've had some turnover, and I expected it. I lost some people that I didn't expect to lose.
Okay.
And I had some people that I expected to fall apart that have really risen to the challenge. And so that's been pretty exciting. But I've got people that have left and they think my name is Mud, right?
Yeah.
I've got people that have left that love to come on the Friday night calls and troll me.
Yeah.
And that's fun too.
Yeah.
Because I can take it. If I'm going to dish it out, I get
to take it. Right.
Yeah. And I have people that have left and call me for advice.
Yeah.
And people that I've hired, fired, and then talked about hiring again, but maybe not.
Right. Yep. So, I take, we have dinners and stuff at the shop, and the majority of them come to eat, and we do things together. And a while back, I took everybody to the beach, even the people that don't work here anymore. And we just took off and went to the beach. Right. And so we have, for the most part, a really close knit group, and the people who, as I've matured as an owner, I've had a much better ability to look at a situation and go to somebody and say, this isn't really where you want to be, is it? This isn't really what you want. Right? December is a great example of that, because Jade and I had both seen December really getting more and more frustrated. And she locked up over the span of a couple days. And she wouldn't really talk, and she acted like she was mad at us. And she pulled me aside, and with tears in her eyes, she said, I just want to be good at my job again. And so she had been in collision, and she came on as an estimator here thinking it was the same thing as estimating collision. It's completely different, right? And I said, why have you been so upset? She's like, I had to convince myself I hated you guys. So I could feel good about quitting because I really love it here. Right. And so we're still friends. And Jade, Jade had long said that she didn't want to be customer facing. Jade had done a lot of work in the medical field. Jade was the best service advisor I've ever met, but it's not what she wanted to do. Right. why would I try and keep somebody, even if they're that good, if it's not what she wants?
What's she doing now?
She is a lab tech in a doctor's office. And that's what she wanted to do.
I think she should move to Raleigh and be a service advisor for me.
I know, right? Good luck convincing her of that. So, I mean, I think that it does suck to lose employees, and it does suck to have that turnover. It is part of having a business.
I want to go back to something you said. You talk about we were doing dinners, and you said, we decided to take everybody to the beach.
Yeah.
I don't have the ability to take everybody to the beach. And one of the things that I decided years ago that I've used to brag about, and I'm starting to realize I was maybe making a mistake, is I made the choice to pay more than the market and to give better benefits than the market.
Yeah, me too.
And give up profitability so that I had some freedom of life. And
now you don't really have a lot of money to do all those other things.
Well, now I'm back working 60 hours a week, right?
Yep.
And I don't have the profit margins to be able to do those types of things.
Right.
So everybody thinks that, not everybody, but a lot of people think that, Mike's this role model and he's got a great business. Yeah. I don't have the margins that I'm supposed to have.
No, listen, my margins are okay, but you know what kills me? Is I do not have the cash flow. And I spend money, and then I regret spending money, and then I spend money on cards, or it gets tight and I have to use the line of credit or whatever it is, and then interest eats up all my profit. And I'm with you, right? Like I say all the time, I'm a shitty shop owner. Like, there's no doubt about it.
Well, the original title for my podcast was supposed to be Confessions of a Shitty Shop Owner. Yeah. So
I hate to tell you, but it may still be that.
That's what everybody made me know it as. I don't know.
It just pops up randomly. The logo is going to change when you're not looking.
Yeah, it made some people uncomfortable, though. When I was having some conversations with folks, there were some people that were like,
I mean, I'm not sure. Okay, I'm not going to say what I was going to say.
My mom probably would not approve.
You don't think? I bet your brother would approve.
He has spicier ideas than even that.
Yeah. He's got a lot to say about you. So can we have him on the show?
I'm sure I'll have him on eventually. Just
want to make sure.
Mock me.
Now it's recorded.
Yeah,
it's recorded. You want to talk about it?
No.
No, I was talking about the other situation, not your brother. I mean, I get too much pleasure out of that. I want to milk this over the next few years.
I don't know where you got this. So we had a conversation once, and here's what we're talking about. We had a conversation once years ago about how I was constantly trying to live up to my brother, who's 7 years older than me. And so he's like first chair trumpet in the band, and he's the lead in the school theater, and he's the captain of the wrestling team, and he's on the beta club. And so he's 7 years ahead of me. And so he was just like this star in everything that he ever tried to do.
It's the only thing I've ever been able to say that shakes Mike a little bit. It's the only thing I've ever been able to accomplish. Like this little, you can just see this little look in your eye when I bring it up, and you're like, ah.
Well, I came along into high school 7 years after him, right? And I was, a borderline fucking delinquent.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody's, why can't you just be more like your brother? And I never had a complex about it until then. And I remember all these teachers like, oh, you're not like Brent. And I'm like, no, I'm fucking not like Brent. Fuck you.
I mean, like I said, I can genuinely see it in your face when I say something about it. Like I can see it just eat you just a little bit.
Well, little brother complex, right? But I have an incredible relationship with him now.
Yeah.
Right. Our lives went in very different directions.
Yeah.
He was very successful pilot in the Air Force, and now in airlines and retirement.
Yeah.
And I can say confidently, I think that he's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And
you two are a lot alike.
In a lot of ways. And we're very different in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure.
People who haven't ever seen us in the same room together always comment on it after they have seen, especially if we're like at a bar talking shit to people. We're very similar in that capacity. So
I could see that. I could see
that. Good time. But anyway.
Yeah.
So I no longer have a complex about my brother. My complex now is about trying to make my dad proud of me.
Oh yeah. We did shift gears a little bit. Trying to shift gears a little bit.
Trying to live up to my dad's standards and get
that's gonna be tough.
Oh, well, we'll see.
That's gonna be tough. I mean, he's got some pretty high standards, but I think it's because he loves you and he wants to drive you.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about that. He was primarily a single location operator.
Yeah.
And he was very involved in the day-to-day probably until about 5 years before he sold.
Right.
And so he struggles with the fact that I'm not on the counter there every day.
Yeah.
And you can't be when you've gone to multiple locations, right?
Right.
I'm in a store every day now, and I wasn't for a long time, and he did not like that. And I think he feels... Well, one, I've completed the buyout, right? So he no longer is a shareholder in the company, and I think that kind of helped him decompress a little bit.
Yeah.
But he really wanted me to be. You need to be at the shop.
Yeah. We've watched that with my dad a little bit, right? And he has been very. It's not controlling, but he wants it done his way. Right. And he has this idea in his head of what it looks like and how we've always done it. And I think a lot of the reason that he does that is because he's done it other ways and it didn't work. And he had found this one thing that worked and it worked every time. And so he said he latched onto it. Right. And my dad always ran employees like it was. He would give to them in other ways, but the wages were lower, right? And he
employs young people a lot, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he would employ young people, and he would give them lower wages. But he also had these expectations of what it was that they were going to do. And like he doesn't like to see somebody sitting around. He doesn't like to see somebody not active and not doing the things that need to be done when there's something right in front of them that needs to be done. Mm-hmm. And he really struggles with communicating that clearly in a way that doesn't hurt feelings. And so, he's my dad, so I just know how he is about those things. But he has, over the past couple of years, he's really developed as far as having those conversations and letting things just play out. And that was one of the hardest things for me to learn how to do. Not have to be in control of everything.
You're kind of a force of nature, though. Like you just tear through the room. This, and then you're gone, and everybody's like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, right? It's bad. They hate it. And like, I get this response that like, hey dude, you've got to stop talking and walking off because I don't hear what you say. I don't know what you're saying to me. And you come in and you bark these orders and you're walking through. I don't even have time to understand what you said, let alone be able to put it into action, right? So I am guilty of that.
Such a terrible boss.
I am next level terrible boss. I am awful to work for.
Can I do a panel of like your current and former employees?
Sure.
And just get them all a little bit tipsy so they can all.
Yeah, absolutely. I yelled at Eric this morning. He cried.
I noticed that his eyes were a little blotchy. He looked like he was a little upset.
Yeah, he cried a little bit. He was upset.
I figured it was that Holly EFI that he's been fighting with.
Yeah, but, that's been rough. He did just text me and say Holly finally called him after 2 weeks. But he there's this thing that Eric does, and he writes these like super complex, super long write-ups, and then he expects you to pull from within those write-ups what he wants done. And I've made a rule that you have to have different recommendation lines for each one of the things that you want to do. And he keeps forgetting about it. And so then they get missed. And then he's mad at everybody else because it got missed. And I was like, dude, just make another rec line at the bottom so it doesn't get missed. Make sure it's there. I want this. What is this? It's in there. Dude, it's 26 paragraphs. How am I going to... Well, you said we should read the tickets. Bro, I don't even read books. Right? Like, what do you... can you put this on Audible for me? Like, I'll listen to it, maybe.
You just copy it in a GTP and tell me, write this like a fifth grader in one paragraph.
Hey, that's a good idea. That he could take some lessons from Noah on that aspect. Fifth grader.
Did you say that Noah writes like a fifth grader?
Yes, that's exactly what I said. Poor Noah.
I'll let him know when I go back downstairs.
Yeah, don't worry. He's going to listen to this later.
I'm sure. I'm going to catch some shit when mom and dad and my brother listen to this.
Oh, yeah.
They probably had no idea that I had a complex about Brent for a while.
Right. No, they knew. Everybody knew. Everybody still knows. Your wife even makes fun of it. But, you know.
Why are you talking to my wife?
When you were there. Not like that. I have shared some things on the podcast, on ours. Some of it we went back and took down because we didn't really I've got some weird relationships in my family, and some really weird things have happened, and I won't share any names, right? Like we've not really talked a lot about this. I've talked on our show, and we've mentioned some of the things that have happened, but I was very vague and very wide about it. But there's a family business, and I guess it was 6 months ago or so I called you. My mom was on her deathbed, and we had been saying like, hey, we need to develop a board of directors because mom and dad own the business. There's a family member managing the business. And we felt like there needed to be something if something happened to mom and dad both. Because if the business is going to be passed down to the rest of the family, then we need the ability to manage it as a team. Not one person manages it and tells everybody else what's happening and like no insider. I had been told from a very young age, I'm talking about like multiple family members, people from all over the place saying, hey, you watch this. Some people don't know how to manage money or they don't make good decisions. There's been some things. We're not going to share all the things, but you just need to know there's a thing, right? And so my mom's on her deathbed, and my dad says to me, will you go get the mail and bring it down with you? I said, yeah. And so I get the mail, and there's this envelope in the mail, and it's from the IRS. And inside the envelope, I can see the delinquent. I've got pretty good to know where to look. So when mine come in, you know what I mean? Like, And so I see it, and I take it to my dad, and I set it down, and I hand it to him. I said, you better deal with that. And he said, they told me it's okay. It's all taken care of. I said, they don't send those if it's all taken care of. And whether it is all taken care of or not, you better call them and find out. And so he called the accountant. And the accountant said, well, we've been trying to get in touch. We've been saying something's wrong, but we were told not to reach out to you because of your wife's health. And the owner of the CPA firm had been going through some health issues himself, so he didn't understand the gravity of the situation. He's close friends with Dad, and I think he would have probably reached out to Dad if he had seen what was happening. But they said, yeah, there's definitely a problem. And Dad said, well, tell me how much I owe and we'll get it fixed. And they said, somewhere to the tune of $550,000. And like, that's when Dad said, uh-oh, this is weird. Now he did something that a lot of shop owners do, right? This is not a repair shop, but he saw somebody take the pressure off, somebody come in just to deal with it. And he said, here you go. You deal with it, right? He'd been running it for 50 years. He was tired, right? And so he took his hands off of it, and he put some people in, and they were dealing with it. And he goes to the person who's supposed to be running these things and says, like, hey, what happened? And they said, that's your fault. And he said, what do you mean it's my fault? Well, you didn't want me involved in the finances. You didn't want this. I don't have anything to do with any of that. And he said, well, I know I've brought you those manila envelopes that have all the 941s and all that stuff in there. Like, what's the deal here? Like, I know I brought you these. Did you not pay them? It's not really my responsibility. So we decided, hey, let's have a conversation about putting us on the board. and they said, I don't really have a problem with you guys being on the board, but I'm getting ready to go take out a loan that's so big the business will never be able to pay it back. And my mom laying on her deathbed, this was in her hospital room.
A loan for what purpose?
To do all these improvements and make all this stuff happen. And my mom laying on her deathbed's like, what the hell is he talking about? Right? And all of us were that way. Like, why would you ever go get a loan with the intent of not repaying it? Seriously, would you? I mean, does that make sense? Would you ever get a loan so big that the mindset's I'll never repay it? And so we started, I guess it was 3 weeks later. And I had been in Pennsylvania. I flew back. Mom died the day after I got back from Pennsylvania, right? Just barely made it in time. And Dad came to me and he said, hey, I need you to go meet with me and the accountant. And so I went and I met with them. And they said, we need your help because there's so many systems and there's so much stuff that, like, your dad could pay a forensic accountant to start digging into some of this and start to find some of this. But if you could help him just start trying to find some passwords or trying to gain some access to some of this stuff, it's all in his name. So we don't understand, but we've asked. And here's the record of how many times we've asked. Here's the record of the emails, and here's the record of the letters, and here's the record of the text messages. And by the way, we type in every time we call and ask for this. And it's just this sheet, one page right after another, of requesting information that was never provided. Credit card statements. And so there is a payment that comes out every month, $13,300 or $533.09. It's a big payment. And so Dad says, what is this? I don't know. Bookkeeper must have done it. Okay. Ask again in a couple of weeks. I don't know. It was a lease. And every time.
What are you leasing for $13,000 a month?
Well, every time that Dad would ask, or every time that I would ask, or every time my brother would ask, different reason. And if there's anything I've learned from watching cops, it's that when somebody's super defensive and somebody's changing their story over and over again, it's usually because they did something they didn't want everybody to know about, right? Yeah. And so Dad talked to the attorney, Dad talked to his accountant, and he came to me and he said, what I want to do is I want to stop payment on that. And it's such a big number that they'll call us because we've asked for contact information, we've asked for account numbers so we can begin to dig into this, and it's not been given to us. And so I said, well, you need to go to the bank. You need to tell them that you want to stop payment on it. Here's how you do that. He goes and does that. 2 days later, they call us. And I said, we suspect that the lady that was doing the bookkeeping has taken this out. We're really just trying to understand what it is because at this point in time, it was right after Helene. The bank account's empty. There's no money coming in, right? They had a 90% loss. Like, in other words, it dropped it fell straight off. There was no business.
There's no tourism.
And so she says, well, I can't answer that for you, but let me escalate this and let me get you on the phone with somebody who can. And we just knew that it was going to be the bookkeeper on the other end of the line. This lady explains, we'll play the verification call for you, let you listen to it. And she said, let me listen and see if this is a woman or a man that verified this, because my dad knows it was not him. My dad is frugal as all get out, and there's no way he's paying 40% interest on anything.
40?
Right? Oh, at this point, we found out that it's two $200,000 loans at 40% interest. We've not even paid the interest at this point. And there was an initial loan, and then it was a re-up of like a line of credit. And as she begins to narrate what's happening in the call, she says, a woman answers, and now it was transferred to a man. And my heart's kind of sinking at this point, like, what man could this be transferred to? And then we listen and we figure out that it's the person who says they know nothing about this. And so they give my father's social security number and they give my father's birth date 2 times on a recorded line to do this loan. Now they say, well, I had permission to do that. My dad would I mean, like, he complains over 5%, right?
So it sounds like the individual that your father gave the responsibility to operate the business to was responsible for $500,000 plus in tax evasion and $400,000.
$750 in tax evasion, $400,000 in the loans. There was $190,000 embezzlement. There was another $90,000 embezzlement. There were months that $110,000 to $130,000 was spent on credit cards. There were months that much less, but I mean 400 Amazon transactions a month on a company credit card. There were egregious purchases like pieces of equipment and like a very complex system built in this business that probably beyond what it needed to be. There were hundreds of bills that didn't go paid. All this while the individuals responsible were getting fairly substantial paychecks. I mean, well over $150,000 a year of compensation, right? Like substantially more than double of that. And it's really hard right now to look back and not feel like it was done intentionally.
Oh, there's no way to feel like it wasn't intentional.
Taking the money, like that had to be intentional, but destroy the business. You look at that and you say, who in their right mind would do that? Who in their right mind would take something like this and intentionally try to destroy it?
Well, so through communicating with you all along this process and just like hearing how you're dealing with it, and I can tell it's messed you up as it would mess anyone up. I feel terrible for your father because he's dealing with the loss of his wife of 50 plus years.
57 years.
And the potential loss of his business of 50 plus years due to an important person in their life being incompetent or intentionally.
Yeah. We hired a coach, and I think I approached this the wrong way because I wanted to hire a coach because I saw what it had done for me, and I thought they would be receptive. And so we hired this coach. Now, I went out and did research, and I found this coach. You can listen to the episode where I found the coach. It was when we were in Arizona, and we were meeting with the people from Auto Shop Follow-Up, and he used to work in the family businesses space. And he knew somebody that was a coach, and he's like, hey, well, I had heard this person talk about the coach he was talking about. He had been following them on social media and had always talked about how great they were, and he wanted to do some of the things they had talked about and all this stuff. And so I thought, oh my gosh, like we bring this guy in and he'll like really like him, and he'll start working with him and start doing all this stuff. This coach is a military guy. He's no BS. He's straight to the point. He's very, very transparent. He's very kind, but he does not mix his words, right? He's very direct. Mm-hmm. Tell me about this. He asks the hard questions, and he asked hard questions, and it shut everything down. It stopped. And what this guy came back later and said in a board meeting is he said, you would either have to be highly incompetent or this had to be done on purpose to destroy the business.
Why have you and your family made the decision not to have this individual arrested and charged?
Lots of reasons. Because when you love somebody at that level and you care about them at that level, you don't want to see them harmed. It probably wouldn't solve much, especially considering they also stopped paying the insurance that nobody knew about. But I don't think we would see restitution because of it. It would harm other people, and especially when it comes to our children, when it comes to our teenagers, when it comes to the next generation of this family. I made bad mistakes when I was a teenager. I did some really stupid things. And if it had not been for my parents sticking behind me and trying to support me and trying to lift me up, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And if they had not forgiven me for some of my really shitty stuff, I I would not have had the opportunity to turn things around, be who I am. And so without divulging too much information, I think that's the real reason. I remember when I was very little, okay, my grandmother, we used to take her up and down the mountain for cancer treatments, and she had intestinal cancer, colon cancer. And I'll never forget, they talked about when my grandfather was still alive. My grandmother, they had done this new radiation treatment on her intestines. And when she woke up, they came in and said, Miss Underwood, we're so sorry. We made a mistake. We gave you the wrong dosing. It has killed a large portion of your intestines. And we think you probably have 1 to 2 years to live because of what happened. They came in, they took out that part of the intestines. And when they got home, my grandfather, my dad and my aunt on that side of the family went to my grandfather and said, we need to sue him. And he said, that's not the kind of people we are. And they said, what do you mean that's not the kind of people we are? He said, it's not going to fix what happened. And I don't believe that creating frivolous lawsuits over things that people can't control and can't do anything about is the way that this country gets better than what it was. I believe that we're going to take what happened and we're going to deal with it and we're going to go on with our lives. We don't need their money. We don't want their money, and we don't want to extend the suffering that's come from this. Now, she lived for another 30 years, right? But I remember when I was little, them talking about that and them sharing that and talking about what he had said. And so I think that's the other aspect of it, is I think that do no harm is a bigger factor than anything else. And you know, my dad took all my mom's life insurance, all of his savings, all the money he had to bail the business out. So it's not like, I mean, it's not in a great place, but it's not like it's unraveling. It can be saved and it can be dealt with. It's going to be uncomfortable for a while. I think Dad took some actions that are going to be painful later. And I think it sucks, but I don't think that he was given a choice. As far as inheritances and things like that. It's been hard for me in the sense that when you're in these situations, you don't want to advise or you don't want to say something to somebody that comes off as you're biased. I was attacked in this situation saying that I caused all this. I didn't take the money. I didn't this, I didn't that. There was a lot of belief that the money for the shop had come from that other business. And they may have genuinely been told that. That's not where the money came from. And so I was already the bad guy in the situation. And I already felt terrible about it. And I didn't want to be the bad guy. And I didn't want, like, I kept digging thinking I was going to find the saving grace. I kept digging, you know me, the reason I'm a really good diag tech is because I have to find answers. I've got to get to the bottom of it. I mean, it's unhealthy. It's an obsession. And I will dig to no avail. And so there were nights 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm just like sluicing through all this paperwork, digging through all this information. And literally everything I turned over was like, oh shit.
Just got worse and worse.
Oh shit. Oh shit. And so at the end of the day, I was the bad guy. And you know, my brother believed for the longest time that we should try and salvage the situation, right? Neither one of us wanted the business. This person was doing a good job of running the business from the outside looking in, right? Like there were a lot of really good things that happened, and we all wanted to save that and keep it going in that direction. And at 11 o'clock one night, my brother rarely calls me. At 11 o'clock one night, he calls me. He's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm laying in bed. What are you doing? He's like, hey, I need you to go watch this movie, this documentary. I'm like, what documentary? He's like, it's on Prime. It's called All the Queen's Horses. I'm like, what? I don't care about no horses. I don't care about no queens. It's 11 o'clock at night. He's like, I'm telling you, go watch this. And so we go watch it. And it's this story of this controller who runs this town. And she goes in and she starts this job and everything's great. And there's little signs all throughout that something might be slightly off. This woman that works for her, it's like an accountant or a bookkeeper in this city. She starts looking and she starts asking to file this report. And the woman says, yeah, go in there and get this. It's in there. Was really super supportive. Everybody loved her. Everybody thought she was awesome. And so she goes and she gets this report and she starts filling it out. And she's like, this is weird. There's a bank account on here I don't know anything about. And so she looks and she's like, surely this is a mistake. She said, I sat there for a minute and I looked at it and she said, I'm going to go tell the mayor because that woman wasn't there. She said, I'm just nervous about this and I don't want to be the only one who knows. She goes to the mayor and the mayor says, I'm sure there's just a simple, stupid little explanation, but let me look into this. Don't say anything to anybody. So the mayor takes this piece of paper and goes somewhere else. Goes to the bank, starts doing a little bit of digging. This person stole $52.6 million over her tenure as the controller of this city. And it's crazy because like all of the things that were said, all of the things that were done, all of the there were so many similarities that my brother went that night from being on the side of this other person to saying, there's no way you can look at this and say this was not.
It's not systemic and intentional.
Exactly. And so in this case, this woman, she had horses and she had all this stuff and she had bought all kinds of things and had, everybody just thought she was super wealthy. But the interesting thing is that there was a town next door that sent a message and they sent this letter to the city and they said, hey, just bringing this to your attention. We were looking at your numbers and we were comparing ourselves to your numbers because we're trying to make sure we're compatible or we're hitting benchmarks. And he said, it's just really odd that we're the same size town. You had more tax revenue, but you have this huge $30 million deficit and we're banking money. I just thought you might ought to look into this. Right. And so I think what triggered my brother in that was the fact that we borrowed money to be embezzled, right? We borrowed money to...
this person was taking out loans to take the money.
To pay themselves and to do all this other stuff, right? And the one of the more interesting factors in all this was directly after those two $200,000 loans, a series of checks start being written to another individual. And it's clearly not my dad's signature on the check. It's clearly not the bookkeeper. It's one right after another. And some days there were $15,000 to $25,000 checks written in the same day to this person. The person running the business says, well, I had no idea that was happening. You'd have a really hard time not to know about that, right? Well, I didn't get the bank statements. I didn't have access to the bank account. So you're telling me you run a business with no access to the bank account? You don't know how much money you have? No, I just asked the bookkeeper. No, I'm not so.
Do you think the bookkeeper was in cahoots?
I think the bookkeeper was known to have stolen money. Bookkeeper had already admitted to stealing money. And so
why was this person still your bookkeeper?
Well, my parents were very loving and caring people, and they would. What's so wild about all this? My parents would have given them the money. My parents would have just given them the money if they had asked for it. My parents would have given the bookkeeper the money she took if she'd asked for it, right? There's no doubt about it. There's not a question in my mind. And so, but here's the thing, and here's what I didn't know about any of this until later on. One day after all this comes out, my dad comes up and we're in a board meeting and he lays out this handwritten note from the bookkeeper and he slides it across the table for everybody to read. The bookkeeper said, hey, I owe you money. Here's a check for part of what I owe you. I think I owe you X. I just want you to know that I didn't have anything to do with what's happening. And that's when she never showed up for work again. And so...
How long ago was that?
That was about 6 months before all this came out. I felt guilty about it. All right. I have woke up in the middle of the night saying, did I do the right thing? You know, the crazy thing is like, there's this thing called the Red Flag Act, and the Red Flag Act states that if you report fraudulent, wire fraud, embezzlement, anything like that, anything weird, that a financial institution has a legal obligation to report it. And so we didn't expect the person who approved those loans or who said they were my dad to be on the other end of the phone. And so when I called, or when they called us and we were talking about it, it was like a gasp, right? Like they heard me and my dad on the other end of the phone go, right? Like we just didn't expect it. But we also didn't think that by following that pathway,
they would have to report it to the feds,
that we were going to get a call from the FBI about it, because it's a big chunk of money, right?
Yeah.
And so when the FBI called, I really felt guilty, because I'm like, dude, I just blew somebody's life up, right? Now I think we've talked them out of it. Now I'm going to tell you something. Until you talk to an expert interrogator from that organization, I can promise you don't know, like, I wasn't lying to the guy, but I was like, we've got this handled ourselves, you know, a little squeak in my voice. And like, I could tell he was seeing right through me. You know what I'm saying? But I could tell the dude knew. He knew more than what he was sharing. He knew more than what we had said. And so he had already done a little bit of digging before we even got there, right? But I have struggled with guilt with this, because you look at it and you don't know what the right call is. You don't know what the right decision in a situation like that is. And, you know, my wife's come to me a couple of times and she said, hey, listen, she'll get up in the middle of the night and she'll come sit down beside me and she'll say, I know you're struggling with this, but if you had not done what you did, it wouldn't be here, right? Like it would have plummeted and disappeared, right? The last meeting we had with this person, the one thing I can't get over, I've shared this with my dad and my brother and my wife and everybody in my circle. The last meeting we had with this person, they said something I can't get out of my head. And it just runs, and I can hear it in their voice, and it just goes, and it plays on repeat. Anytime I think about the situation, it plays on repeat. They said, you know, if we hadn't slowed down, y'all never would have known. And it wasn't if we hadn't slowed down, we would have been able to pay the bills. It wasn't if we hadn't slowed down, this wouldn't have been a problem. We would have been able to keep things happening. It wasn't any of that. If we hadn't slowed down, y'all would have never known. To me, says I was doing this, and if we hadn't ran out of money this quickly, you would have never caught me, and I would have done what I needed to do. My brother and all the other parties, the attorney, everybody else, is hard set on this was intentional, and the hope was to reduce the value of the business to such a degree that they could come and buy it for pennies on the dollar. Oops, sorry, it's not worth anything. You've bankrupted the business itself. Let me buy the property to bail you out. Right?
I tend to agree with your brother on that. I think this was malicious, nefarious.
It's hard to look at it and not think it is, right? And you know, that sucks to think about. That sucks to process that, because this is somebody that we all trusted. This is somebody that we thought was doing like a really good job. And you know, it's so weird because I've gone back and as we dig into all the systems and we look at things, like there's recordings saved of me talking to my parents in 21. And it was so funny because I'm watching this video of my mom's not here anymore, and I'm hearing her voice. And that was really the first, I've got her voicemail saved on my phone. That was the first time I'd heard her voice since she passed. Right. And so I'm listening to it and we're talking about the things that are happening and the things that are going on. And I realized that in that video, this clip, and it was only videos of me and my other brother saved. There were recorded telephone calls, but it was very odd, the people that their telephone calls were recorded. There were some weird pay discrepancies with employees. It seemed like some employees were paid substantially more than other employees, and some employees were given opportunities other employees weren't given. And that's a that's a concern for me, right? Like now I come in and I'm trying to clean this mess up and find, why were all the pretty girls paid like that?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Hold up. I don't want to be holding this ball. Let me figure out how to back out of this. But there were so many things. But in that one recording, I talked about the fact that if this person wanted to buy the business, that we needed to do a business valuation, and that it was not just going to be like when my father purchased the business from his father. It was going to be, here's the structure for how it needs to be done. So it's by the book, it's on paper, it's done the right way. We're not even necessarily saying like, oh, I want to make sure I get my part of it. No, I'm not remotely worried about the money. My parents have treated me phenomenally well. What my parents are leaving me is a legacy, not money. Okay? I want to make that exponentially clear. I don't care about the money. The money's neither here nor there. It's the legacy they've left, and I've shared that many times. I don't need the business. I don't need any of that other stuff. I want the security of being able to access my business, get in and out, and do those things. But it's not, for me, about having the money from that business. And so it would seem that from the point that that video was recorded or was captured on their security cameras is when all of this started. And that it was almost like, oh, fine. If you want to do a business valuation, I'll show you what this sucker's worth. It really feels intentional in that regard.
Well, I think that you and your father are remarkably forgiving people.
Yeah.
And I think that most people who listen to this story, myself included, would be more of a throw them under the jail and throw away the key.
Yeah.
And so I think it speaks to your humanity. I mean, I think it's admirable.
Yeah.
So
I hope it stands as a lesson to people listening.
Does your dad have a solid estate attorney building an estate plan at this point? Good.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think if there's any one takeaway from this, it's that if you don't have systems, processes, policies, procedures, financial plans, this was a deal where my father said, I love you, I trust you, I know you would never intentionally cause harm, so you go do what you think is best. And what that did was that created a scenario where my father accidentally tanked someone he loved by giving them authority they couldn't control, right? If you were a parent and you're going to give a business away, or you're going to sell a business, or you're going to turn it over to a family member, that does not mean you don't give them structure going into it. You must have structure. And it's, here's what this looks like. If you want to buy the business, here's the pathway for doing that. Here's the guardrails that we have in place. If I'm going to own the business and be financially and fiscally responsible for it, then here's the numbers that I want to see. Here's your guardrails, right? Now, if you want to buy the business, you can go ahead and buy the business right now. We're not doing this deal where I'm going to own the business, you're going to work for me, and then you're just going to one day take it over. This has to be on paper.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Because if you don't, you end up in situations like this. Now, this person had put all over the internet, I'm the owner, third generation owner, caretaker, CEO, all this stuff. And so if let's be completely truthful, if they wanted to litigate over these taxes, it's most likely that person that's going to get hemmed up on that. It won't be my dad. Even though my dad's ultimately fiscally responsible, the IRS, when we start talking to them and the accountant's going through all this, the IRS said, you see these screenshots of this person who says they're the owner? Why were they no longer the owner directly after you reported all this, telling us that you owed us all this money? We want to know. Right? Like, what do you say? Well, you got to tell them the truth. There is a IRS form. Did you know there's an IRS form that you have to use to report embezzlements?
So you can pay taxes on the money you get from the embezzlement? Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so that form has to be filed, right? They have a form where they want an explanation of what happened, why it happened, and we had no choice but to tell them, right? The $190,000 that got taken by that one person had to be reported. And so the accountant, he comes to us and he says, look, here's the deal. I'm a professional. I am not your attorney. We do not have attorney-client privilege. And so I know what happened, and I am legally bound to tell them the truth because I ain't getting ready to lie for you.
Yeah.
And so y'all might be trying to save him, and y'all might be trying to, and he said over and over again, he said, I guess I'm just going to have to get mad about this because y'all aren't mad enough. And so he's like, dude, I'm going to tell them. Like, I'm going to tell them what happened. And what they do with that is their business. Sorry. So at that point, it may be out of our hands. We don't know what happens then.
Well, I wish you nothing but the best, man.
What do you think?
I think you throw him under the jail and you help him throw away the key personally.
Right.
But again, I'm not as forgiving a person as you. So,
yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. Maybe an update in a couple of years. See if anything comes of it. So guess what this means now? This means that I am the only other viable person that's capable of running this business in its current configuration. Not what I wanted to do. Let me be exceptional. This person thinks that I did this so I could take over. I want to be exceptionally clear. That is absolutely 100% no.
This person thinks that they stole over $1 million so that you could take over the business?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's what they think. So I'm learning to do new things now.
Well, you don't have anything else going on.
No.
So, right now you've got the family's historical business. You've got L&N. You've got Changing the Industry.
Yeah.
You've got a family of podcasts kind of under that umbrella. Yeah. You've got some issues going on with your back that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
What are you doing with your free time?
I'm trying to sleep. 2 or 3 hours when I can.
Just more stimulants.
Yeah, exactly. I still have. I've done a good job of, for the most part, managing my time. Right now, it's a little hectic and a little crazy because I've got a bunch of time out of town. I'm going to Tulsa. Just came back from San Diego, going to Jacksonville. Right, like those things add on. The thing that I did not think about in all this is now I'm working weekends too. And so like that's tough because I really want to spend time with my family. Little dude's at that age. He wants to play video games. He wants to hang out with dad. He wants to,
Brian Pollock and I were just talking about this today that the true evil shop owner methodology is kids work for free. Right. Yeah. So just if you want to spend time with them, bring them to work.
It's a good idea.
You can put them to work at the Hill.
Yeah. Let him roll.
Absolutely.
Let him roll.
You do tours.
There is another lesson in all this. Completely kind of changing the subject here. As shop owners, we build these systems. We put these software packages in place, and we put a DVI product in place, and we put accounting software in place.
Thanks, Tekmetric.
This is a shopware show. Not your show. This is a shopware show. What do you think? I'm going to get a call from PJ and Monique. It's going to be... But long story short, we tend to put these systems in place and walking into this system from outside. There's 3 takeaways that I would say. This person developed a culture of leadership in this business that got away from them. And here's what I mean by that. They kept telling all the employees they were going to get raises. They kept telling all the employees they were going to move up. They kept telling all the employees they were going to move to salary. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Well, they never did what they said they were going to do. Now, they still took their paycheck and still requested unemployment while they were taking their paycheck.
But now you've come into the business and all these people want raises and positions.
And I'll question that a little bit. Like, hey, is it possible that maybe they're doing this? Right?
How many employees over there?
I think 10.
Okay.
And so here's what's interesting, though. is that looking at the culture from the outside looking in, it looked okay. But then when we stepped in and started talking to them about what's happened and how things have gone and why they did the things that they did and why this was that, holy cow. The perspective that these people have of what happened, what they were told, what didn't happen, it is very difficult because the culture wasn't managed. There was no leadership. This person would go down for a meeting in the morning and then they would go back to their office and they stay in their office all day. Well, there was no management of the culture. There was no management of expectations. There was no management of tasks. Hey guys, trust you, go do what you want to do. All right. The second thing is all of these systems. So we have automated music and it's on one platform, and we have automated signs and it's on one platform, and we have one point of sale system that's over here and one point of sale system that's over here. And we're going to do this like this. We're going to do this like this. And then stepping from the outside and walking in, I'm looking at it saying, I thought I had a lot of software packages and I thought I had a lot going on down here. And then I walk into that and I'm like, it looks like a bundle of wires.
I think it was intentionally over complex to make the organization dependent upon
this person. I'm going to be a little arrogant here. This person knows that I'm smart enough to unravel that, right? I worked with this person for a while. And that was in the IT days. This person knows that they would have to, like, I don't mean it from a place of arrogance. I mean it from a place of I know what I can do. You'd have to work really hard to find something that I couldn't unravel and couldn't straighten out. I think it was, and there's been a lot of talk of that. Dad's brought it up. My other brothers brought it up. A lot of other people have said something about it. I think it was, ooh, I want to do this new thing. Oh, I'm going to do this. And then let's click some buttons and get it to where it works. And it works. Just don't touch it or it'll fall apart. And then, ooh, I want to do this new thing over here. And I want to do this new thing over here. And so it's like your canned jobs in your shop management software. And you click on it and you're like, oh my God. And then you like look at all these parts, miss. Where'd all these parts come from? Where are these random cars in here, right? Like same thing.
I don't have that problem with my software.
Yeah, I don't believe you. I don't even remember. I'll never forget the conversation. I think about it from time to time. Hey guys, what do I do? I've got an advisor who is deleting recommendations off the ticket to improve his close ratio. Remember that?
Was that something that I put? I don't remember. I believe it, but I don't remember.
No, I remember that. We were having these weekend meetings, and I think Greg Buckley was there. You know what it was? It was one of the meetings Bruce was having.
Okay, I believe that.
Yeah, and you were saying like, hey, I've got this advisor who he's not marking things declined, and he's deleting anything off the ticket, so he improves his close ratio.
Yeah, he wanted his close ratio to be highest in the company because his ego was so strong.
Yeah.
So he would remove shit that he couldn't sell.
Right, so it looked better. But that's the second lesson is like, hey, don't make it too complex. Don't make sure it's operationally sound, and make sure that systems are clean. Make sure that you're not building up just piles and piles of stuff for somebody else to deal with. Right.
I think that's a problem I've got is I get a little shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
And then fail to follow through. I was realizing that I have multiple tools for managing my business that are very good tools if utilized. I don't have the bandwidth to use them, and I haven't taught anyone else to use them, so I'm just paying these subscriptions for these tools that I'm not using.
Yeah, I've got Wicked File, and I've paid for like 3 months, and I've not done anything with it.
It's supposed to be awesome, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the ones I had the restraint not to do Wicked File, but it was Uwe Kleinschmidt's newest venture, Autotech IQ.
Yeah.
And that is a really neat tool.
If you use it.
Yeah. And I was 4 months in, I was like, I haven't logged in a single time.
Yeah.
So there's no point. And I was like, hey man, the tool's awesome. It's just my life's not getting any slower right now. And if I'm not going to use it, there's no point in having that tool.
You're exactly right. Yeah. And I think that really summarizes at the end of the day where that other business is at. Is there was so much, and there was so much waste, and there was so much just Dude, we found probably 25 cases of ink cartridges for printers that we don't even have, and they still show up on subscription. Like 150 ink cartridges per box. Why? Like, it's just utter waste.
Corporate waste.
Yeah. And so I think that if you are going to put somebody in a situation like that, you cannot just walk away. You have to have a system in place. You have to have guardrails in place. You have to figure out how you're going to manage it. And so if you're getting ready to sell a shop, if you're getting ready to put a family member in charge of a shop, you have a responsibility to set them up for success. Nobody else can do it for you. They're not going to do it on their own. So your job as the owner to make it happen.
Almost everything that goes wrong at any shop or any business is the fault of the owner.
Absolutely.
Through their actions or inactions, right?
Yeah.
So,
100%.
Dude, thank you for opening up and sharing.
Of course.
I appreciate that.
You know, I'm a little too much of a share. I'm pretty open about things.
Well, next time we get together, we can have Mike's therapy session rather than Lucas's.
Bet. Let's do it.
See you. Bye.
See ya.